Hello and welcome to the Introduction to the CLD Certification webinar. My name is Joe de Guzman and I'm the Senior Certification Coordinator for the CLD, and we'll be moderating this session. Before I introduce our speaker, I have some housekeeping items for you, many of you which I've already heard. Attendees' microphones will be muted and cameras will be turned off. Please stay muted during the presentation. You can submit any questions using the chat function at the top right of your screen. To submit a question, click on the chat button. At the bottom, click Everyone and change it to Organizers before submitting your questions. For a more streamlined view of the presentation, please click on View Everyone at the top middle of your screen and switch it to Hide Everyone. This way you can get a better view of the presentation. And to ensure a smoother connection on your end, please close all other applications you have open, whether that's another web browser tab or email or anything like Slack or Microsoft Teams that can hinder your internet connection. This session will be recorded and uploaded to the CLD YouTube channel at a later time, and it will also be on our website. And the slides will be available as well. We'll send those out to you. Now let me introduce you to our speaker. Peter Raynham has spent 40 years working in lighting. For the last 24 years, he has worked as a researcher and educator at University College London, where he is currently Professor of Lit Environment. He has been very active in a range of industry and professional bodies and is currently a commissioner of the CLD program. Peter, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, Joe. And I think probably what I need to say to start with is welcome, but think about the CLD as an opportunity for improving the standing of the lighting profession. I'm going to go through in some detail bits of why the CLD is important and a little bit more about it. Now, unfortunately, I don't know who we're talking to today, and therefore some of you will know a little bit about the CLD, some of you will know absolutely nothing, and some of you might know quite a bit. I'm going to have to run on the assumption that you know next to nothing. Otherwise, I'm going to leave a few people behind. So I'm going to work through a presentation. Hopefully it will cover everything, but knowing me, I'll have left some holes in it. So please, please, please ask questions towards the end, and I will do my best to answer them, or at least point you in the direction of an answer. So we move on. Some basic questions that I think we need to answer today. Why have a credential at all? What is the Certified Lighting Design Program? And how do you get a CLD? So let's start with the first of those questions, is why have a credential? And there are lots of things that are important. First of all, it's a good mark of a mature profession. Really, lighting design as it's practiced now only really started about 40 or 50 years ago. There was a few leading practitioners starting the industry off, but really we are, as professions go, quite a new profession, and to establish our maturity, perhaps we need some form of mark that we can say, this person we can trust to be a good lighting designer. There are other issues as well. So one of the things that the IALD have been fighting for a long time is regulatory interference with the lighting profession. People in various legislative bodies have been thinking, wouldn't it be nice to restrict who can do certain jobs? And so the idea is that if we have this system up and running, then as soon as somebody says, oh, anybody's doing lighting design, how can we trust them? Then all of a sudden we have a ready-made solution, particularly if it's well accepted and used in the industry already. So having a up and running certified system is a big insurance against regulatory problems downstream. So then we have the issue of clients and the public. How do you tell your client that you are qualified to do what you want to do? How do you explain to them that you're competent in your job? Okay, you can show them a portfolio maybe, and for some clients that's enough. But for some of the more mechanistic mindsets, I think some form of qualification is a real good thing forward. And finally, it's a mark to give you, demonstrate to your colleagues and to everyone else that you are competent in your profession. I have heard talk in one practice, they're actually using this as a guideline to see who might be able to get to a slightly higher status within the organization. So it's a simple way of assessing whether somebody is competent and has the basic skill set to do their job. So moving on. So the CLD is a credential. Now, in blue, you'll see some standardized text that somebody wrote, but it actually is quite good that it's there. I was going to say in black and white, but in this case, it's blue and white to say it's a standardized measurement of competency independently assessed against the best industry practice principles. So if you like, to get a CLD, you must be able to demonstrate that you're competent or at least capable of delivering good design that's at least as good as best practice in the industry. But we can also think about this as perhaps as what it's not. It's not a restriction to practice. In principle, anyone can be a lighting designer. What this is saying that not only am I behaving as a lighting designer, I'm actually doing a good job and I'm competent at what I'm doing. It's not a simple examination. It's not something you can mug up for. It's something that is a test of what you've been doing as a designer. And also, it's not a membership of an association. This is not admitting you to a club in any way. This is just saying you can do your job. Oh, and one final point, it's not an award submission. Over the years that we've been running this, not that big a percentage, but maybe 10% of entries into this are people applying for a CLD. I thought that actually what I need to do is demonstrate that I've got award-winning lighting designs and my work is brilliant. It's not quite like that. What we're looking for is not utter brilliance, the sort of thing that would win an award, but we're looking for stuff that says you're competent. If a person comes to you, they will get a good, competently executed lighting designer, even if it's not award-winning. So who is the CLD for? And roughly speaking, what do you really need to do to actually get one? Well, first of all, it's for anybody who's working in the area of lighting design. If you're a lighting design practitioner, then this is designed for you. Now, we've put in a limit of 3 years experience as a lead designer with sufficient projects to reach the portfolio requirements. That 3-year experience is a requirement, and it's actually put there to make life simpler for people who are applying for it. Generally, if you haven't had 3 years of experience, then the idea is that probably you haven't quite got a big enough body of work to be able to make a sensible application. So to a certain extent, it's probably saving you a lot of time in working at that. Now, the CLD recognises that certain professional bodies have a series of stringent requirements for people wanting to join them. And so there is a streamlined process for application from professional members of approved associations. Now, the application process is something I'm going to mention today, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because in a week's time, there's going to be a further presentation that dives much deeper into that application process. So I'm just going to talk about general terms today. And then if you're interested in getting your application in, and let's face it, we're all sitting at home with not a lot to do. And so now's a really good time to do it. Then next week, there'll be a really good presentation coming along to explain that to you in a lot more detail. So the CLD is an independent assessment of proficiency based on evidence satisfying 7 domains of lighting practice. Now, the 7 domains of lighting practice evolved out of quite a lot of research into what lighting designers did, what members of the lighting design profession thought was important, and it has been field tested quite a bit and was found very robust before we adopted it as the CLD. Since we've been running the CLD, it is actually taken off, and it's actually a very good way to look at the profession. I'll come on to those 7 domains in a minute. But essentially, to get a CLD, you have to answer questions about how you achieve these domains of competence or domains of practice in various schemes. You must produce supporting evidence, typically maybe images of the work you did, or perhaps plans to explain what's going on. And you have to provide letters from a client to say you actually did this work and they were happy with it. So let's move on to the domains of competence. Hold on 1 minute. Sorry about that. I'll skip through a few too many slides. So, as I said, all of these domains is intensively researched, and realistically, they are proved to be quite a robust means of defining what we do as a lighting design profession. So there's domains 1 to 7 up on screen now. And if we take a few minutes to look at them, you look at them and you've realized, actually, this is a blatantly obvious description of what we as lighting designers do. It's just that nobody has ever quite thought about it this way before. So domain 1 is goals and outcomes. Clearly, when you're doing a design, you expect to achieve in your outcomes the majority of the goals of the client. You are expected to collaborate with goodness knows how many people in every job, because as a lighting designer, you get involved in some really complex building projects. And so making sure what you're doing fits in with everyone else is quite a complicated process. Domain 3 is about ingenuity. We wouldn't expect you to do nothing but lighting design by looking up whatever the local standard says, putting out half a dozen light fittings and say that meets the code. We would expect you to be ingenious, to take what can come out of your design to a much higher level and thinking about the clever stuff. We would expect synthesis to be present. So synthesis is taking ideas from multiple strands and multiple sources, thinking about what you want to do with them and evolving them into a final solution, taking multiple threads together. Clearly, these are some of the harder parts of lighting design. Then there's the science aspect. To be a CLD, you must have sufficient knowledge of the mechanics and the basics and the physics of light and the human reaction to light to understand how you are providing a good design solution. Yeah, you can create beautiful lighting, or you can visualize beautiful lighting. But if it isn't practical or has major negative consequences like glare to the users or something, then clearly it isn't going to work. So realistically, the science is the bit that will help you through that bit. Then we come on to stewardship. Lighting is not an unalloyed good. Your light fittings are going to consume energy. You might be creating spill light into a dark region. So there's a lot of potential negatives. So for any good lighting design scheme, you will have tried to make your project as sustainable as possible. You'll have tried to make things work on a minimum amount of energy. You have probably tried to select fittings which are readily recyclable. You tried to stop spill light. So all of those issues are sort of gathered together under the heading of stewardship. And finally, the bit that matters about every lighting design is human experience. After all, lighting design is for people to enjoy. It's for people to have a better than possible experience of what would be had your work not happened. So promoting human experience should be one of your key goals of any lighting design. So when you're applying, you need to get between 2 and 4 projects together, and you must do both interior and exterior projects, although most projects, I guess, have an exterior element to them as well as an interior element, or vice versa. And you're going to need letters of attestation, as I mentioned earlier. All of these are about you demonstrating to the assessors that you know what you're doing. And pretty much any project you do as a designer can be used. So I put a list of the projects which are nominally permissible, and we see artistic permanent installations, commercial, cultural, entertainment, healthcare, hospitality, institution, public spaces, residential, retail, sport. In general, I'm sure if you look down that lot, you'll probably find that pretty much everything that you've done, or almost everything that you've done, will fit into that somehow. And if it doesn't, then, and you have a real lack there, then when you come to do your application, then I suggest you talk to one of the commission or to Joe, and I'm sure most things can be adapted into those categories. So there's a streamlined application for professional members of approved organisations, but all that means is some of the domains are taken as granted, and so it just makes you easier to put in. Then your actual application is reviewed against stated performance criteria in the domains of practice, and it is double-blind reviewed. So the reviewers don't know who the applicant is, and the applicant doesn't know who the reviewer is. And there are 3 reviewers per application, and what happens is that the majority vote gets it. So if 2 reviewers pass you for a given domain, then that's good enough. Now, the reviewers are all subject matter experts. There's quite a large pool of reviewers, and so there's a really good chance that the reviewer will not even know you from the work. Although when I was a reviewer a while ago, some people did make a few mistakes. So letters of attestation did not have the fields blanked out and that sort of thing, but just a little bit of care. And I seem to remember 1 or 2 sets of drawings turning up with names of the project on. But that sort of thing's bound to happen to a certain extent, but it never clouded my judgment. And I think most reviewers will behave in that way. So a few little tips there. Make sure you anonymize the stuff that you submit if you choose to do so. So you've got to get 2 of the 3 reviewers to market. And if you fail a few domains, then you can resubmit with further material within 4 months. Now, if you do fail, one of the things that the reviewers will provide is quite detailed feedback as to why you haven't got through, and that should give you the information to help you to resubmit. Generally, when I've looked at these in the past, it's been that there's been a question on the paper and people haven't quite answered the question. So a key thing to think about if you're applying for this and you see a question, make sure your answer actually answers the question. Now, to make an application, there's a website. It's quite relatively easy to use. You just sign into it, hope for the best, set yourself up an account, and it will guide you through a series of questions. However, if it were me, I would take a bit of time. I'd go there, I would download all the material, read what was wanted first, and try to plan it a bit. And hopefully that's what's going to be discussed next week. We have, hang on, if I go through, next week we have Dawn coming to tell you how to apply. Now, Dawn I've known for some years. She's a really great lighting designer, and she applied for this quite a while ago. I think she was one of our earlier CLDs. She got through without much trouble, and she's been a great ambassador for the Certified Lighting Design program ever since. So a little bit out of sequence, just need to explain how all of this works, because here you are, you're about to, if you choose to do this, you're about to sign up for something, and perhaps you need to have a little bit of confidence on how it works. So essentially, the CLD program is run by the CLD Commission, and we're basically representatives of lighting design and related stakeholders. And we try to provide independent governance to make the program both rigorous and attractive to people to use. Generally, we get together every twice a year. I suspect this year we're going to be more relying on teleconferencing than face-to-face. But the idea is that we decide what's going to be done and how it's going to be run over the next year or so, whereas people like Joe actually do the day-to-day work of making sure it all runs smoothly. So the Commission are quite well known in the profession, I would say. We have David Becker from Australia, who is the chair of the Commission. We have Rosemary Allaire from the United States, who's vice chair and has been on the committee for a long, long time, even before. We have Rita Harold, who is the past Director of Technology for the IES in the United States. There's me, and there's Douglas Leonard, who's a lighting consultant and an educator from Chile. Okay, so we're supported by the IALD for initial setup, and our objective as a body is to become both financially and independent of the IALD as soon as possible. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the deadline we're going to make that by, but clearly we need to be as a body as independent so that we can provide a clear independent credential that will support the lighting industry that is going to be seen to be independent as far as possible. And at which point I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. Hold on, gone back one. And perhaps now would be a good time for people to start asking some questions. So I haven't got any questions in my chat box. I don't know, Joe, if you have anything yet.
I don't, but I want to add, if you could go back one slide to Dawn's slide.
Yeah.
Rosemarie Allaire is also going to be joining Dawn. I learned that late on Friday. So we'll have two people who have gone through the CLD, and both, obviously you mentioned that Rose is the vice chair.
Yeah.
And then Dawn has had it for a very long time. So we have two very seasoned CLD veterans and who know everything about the ins and outs of the application and how to organize and do that. So if you are interested in that part of the process, by all means, join us on next Thursday. Sign up is at both ILD.org and CLD.global. One question, while we're waiting for questions, I have a question for you, Peter. For the streamlined application, what does that mean if you are professional level or higher? It said streamlined, but I'm not sure you explained what that means.
Streamlined, so that means that there are certain domains which you do not have to fill because you're deemed to have completed them because of you would have had to demonstrate you were competent in those domains to actually get your membership of the supporting organization. So therefore it just makes the whole process a lot easier. It means you need to use less submissions because you don't have to stretch your material so far and that sort of thing. Now, the details of the process are on the CLD website. There's a really good download guide there, which I strongly recommend to everybody. So a quick visit to the CLD website. And while I'm sharing screens, let's see if I can show that to everybody.
You probably need to escape. There you go. I was say probably need to escape out of slideshow, but you got it.
Yeah. So there's a really useful website. There's requirements and processes, how to apply, and it's how to apply where you've got lots of things here. And here you see, as I was saying earlier, that it gives you that collaboration and stewardship are already assumed if you are a member of one of the professional associations. So there's I strongly recommend that website to everybody. It tells you, if you're prepared to read it, it tells you a lot more than what I've been able to convey in this relatively short presentation.
Right, and while we do wait for some questions, if there are any, I'll go on to explain that the CLD handbook has the questions in them. So it's not a surprise to go into the application and wonder what you're going to be asked. It asks all the questions. There's tables in there that tell you what types of exhibits that you should be uploading, whether it's schematics or blueprints or renderings, or some of the domains, I believe domain 1 and 7 require photos of finished projects, so keep that in mind. But all that is explained in the handbook, and there's also the handbook supplement, which is a little newer. And the difference between the handbook and the handbook supplement, the handbook goes into all of the processes and lays out the bones of how you apply for the application. The supplement is tips and suggestions based on reviewer feedback that we've gotten in the past on how you should form the responses to your questions. So while Peter had said, be as direct as possible, the supplement goes into a little more detail about how to form those questions, which is great. So it is a good thing to have. That's why we have the supplement.
Okay, it looks like we've got a question here. So we're only applicable if you have a 3 years experience as a leading lighting designer. And then the question goes on, do you mean either to have to be a lighting director or a senior lighting designer? The point there is that what we're looking for is somebody who has had made the design decisions for a project that they're claiming. So if you have actually designed from the ground up a project or a particular element of our project, then, and you have been making that all the way through, then you're good to go. If you've just been someone who's saying, somebody says, I want this wall wash up here, I want this style like this, and you've just gone in and detailed the luminaires and maybe washed it through some lighting design software to check it, then clearly you're not doing it. So if you've made the design decisions for projects over that period, you've actually implemented the work and done the liaison to make sure all of the projects work, then you're eligible. The problem with terms like design director, senior lighting designer, and so the language which we use to describe people varies a great deal as we go around the world. So be careful of job description names. What we're looking for is people who've had the role of selecting and doing the design and forming things. Okay?
I
hope that answers the question.
I do have a question on my end, Peter. I don't know if you got it, but do we get IALD professional status as CLD is being approved? I can answer that one for you if you'd like. No, yeah. The answer to that is no. Because you have your CLD does not automatically give you a professional IALD status, nor does having the professional IALD status give you a CLD automatically. You still have to apply. Those two things are separate. Membership into an association versus a certification are two separate things. So if you're not a professional IALD member yet, you will have to go through all 7 domains. If you're already a professional IALD member or of any of the other associations, which are ACE, the French lighting, Appeal, OPDI. Peter's finding it for me right now. I think it's at the bottom of that screen right there, maybe. Yeah. Or ASLI, Brazilian lighting. Then you can get the professional level or higher. Any of those associations will get you the streamlined application. But that was the long answer to the question. The short answer to the question. Yeah, no, you do not get professional IALD members.
And the reason for this is quite important because we are totally independent of the association. So for example, to be a member of the IALD, you have to be a totally independent lighting designer. Lighting designers working with certain business models are not allowed to apply. The CLD is all about, are you any good at doing lighting design? And can you demonstrate that you're good at doing lighting design? If you can demonstrate that you're competent in lighting design, no matter how you're employed or how you make your projects pay, you're welcome. Whereas IALD is a trade association for lighting designers. So there's a slight difference of objective between the two bodies, and that's important because we want to become in CLD a recognized mark for good, competent lighting designers, not necessarily a mark for people who follow a particular way of doing business, even though we might think that's quite a good way of doing business. Okay.
Do you have any more questions on your end, Peter, or not? Because I don't have any more.
No, I can't see any more. So there's something gone wrong here. I must have explained everything properly. Very unusual for me.
Looks right. And as always,
just hang around.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, let's hang around and see if there's another.
Yeah. Wait, looks like I got one here.
Okay.
What about the project size is expected to be shown in the application? A small project could already show a lot of competence.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I could imagine that you might, this is the beauty of lighting design. Yeah. There's probably, I could imagine designing a football stadium complete with sports complex next to it as being an application, or I could imagine a display case in a jewelry store being an element in an application. Provided it demonstrates competence, the scale of the project doesn't matter. It's about demonstrating competence. And actually, some of these little projects are really difficult to do. Some of the smaller things are even harder than the bigger projects. A lot of the bigger projects are a lot of the same thing. Whereas if you're trying to figure out how to get light into a particularly awkward place and still make it look great, then you're probably demonstrating more competence with that than you are with a 50-acre shopping mall. So
Yeah,
size is no problem.
So yeah, as someone who's been with the program since 2016, I've seen every project size from a stairwell to, you know, a living room, bedroom of a residence to, like Peter said, stadiums, garages, you know, full office buildings, not just, you know, a floor in an office building, but the entire like corporate headquarters and things like that. So we've seen it all, and there's like Peter said, there's no project too small as long as it shows competence and you know, and ingenuity, science, all of those things that the domains of practice show.
So we haven't quite got down as far as the jewelry display cabinet or a
Not
museum,
yet.
but hey, we're not yet.
Not
But
yet.
here's hoping.
Maybe one day. So with that, we're always I'm always able to contact. If you have any questions after this, by all means contact me. My email is on the website, whether it's info@cld.global or joseph@cld.global. I read, obviously I read my own email, but I also read the info@ email. So by all means, send any of your questions there. And we will certainly be able to answer them. We're on social as well, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Send us messages there if you'd like.
Hold on.
Did get one question. As a professional member, could I submit just one project for each of the 5 domains?
Now hold on. I'm going to have to look the rules up there, but I think you can't. You're limited to, I think, 2 to 4 projects total.
Yeah, you have to have
you
have to submit 2 to 4 projects. You have to use at least both of those projects if you're submitting 2 across those questions. Now, whether that's submitting, I'm going to use one project for one domain and the other project for the other 4 domains, you're still using both projects. So split that up however you'd like, but you still need to demonstrate across 2 projects for the person that asked this question across the application. Again, whether that's, I'm going to use my library for goals and outcomes, and I'm going to use my museum for the rest, that's totally fine. But you do need to use 2 projects.
Yeah. I'll just say there's a little bit of tactics here in working out how you're going to do this. I would strongly recommend that you actually listen to the webinar next week from 2 people who have actually done this and planning out how best to do it and what the easiest way through is a bit of an art, because you've got a series of domains to justify against, and you've got a limited number of projects. So work out which project shows what competence and how you get 2 competencies out of one project and 3 out of another, etc. So what I would recommend you do is think of a list of your best projects and then listen next week and then work out which one slots in best to which domain.
Yeah, we have a template for organization that we'll be sharing next week. But if the person that asked this question wants to email me, I can go ahead and send that to them early. But they did have a follow-up question saying 5 different projects, but only 1 of each for domain. Again, the answer to that is no, because you can only submit 4 projects max. So you would have to use one of those projects up to 4 if you're submitting twice. Yeah. So let's say you use that library for goals and outcomes and then something else, and then your other 3 projects across the 3 other domains. The template will help you organize that a little bit better, but the max is 4 projects.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, because actually, if you only do one good thing in each project, then perhaps you're not that good.
I mean, you should be able to, to show competency across that. You should be able to use it at least once across those things. Not to say that you can't use it for, one of each, but the way that the application is formed is that you can only submit up to 4 projects, so you can't submit a 5th project.
And I don't know if you've got many questions. I've got one here, Joe.
Yeah,
that
I think
says,
yeah.
Is the CLD program process applicable in Northern America? And the answer is yes, it works pretty much everywhere in the world. I suspect that most of the existing certified lighting designers are actually in North America. As a matter of interest, you can click here and it gives you a list of people who've got it. And then we go by country name. Okay, so we'll see, because it comes first in the alphabet, we get a lot of Australians. And then we get Canadians, Germans.
Yes, the majority of the
we've got Mexico.
CLDs, are from North America.
And now we come into the United States. So there's quite a few. So spread in North America, quite a few. If you like, the 2 main takeoffs for it so far, it's spreading through the world, but if you like, the center of the epidemic, to use modern parlance, has been the United States and Australia. Maybe that's not a good way of discussing it right now, I don't know. But so we see there's quite a few people from the United States and Australia as well, so quite a bit of a critical mass building in those places, starting to take off a little bit in Europe and a few places in the Far East as well. So it will be interesting to see how it develops.
Right.
Okay. Have you got any other questions there, Joe?
I don't, but if anyone does, feel free to go into the chat function at the bottom instead of click on everyone and switch it to organizers. That way, Peter and I can go ahead and see that.
Yeah.
Or you can send it to Peter, or you can send it to presenter only also.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for some questions, you touched on the webinar that's coming up on Thursday the 16th with Dawn and Rosemarie. For those interested, and I'll piggyback off of what you were saying, Peter. They are going into how to organize your exhibits and portfolios and get them in order so you can prepare yourself to start the application. And they'll actually do a live application online, so you'll see what the application looks like when you log in. That's not to say you don't know what the questions are. The questions are listed in the CLD handbook, and I believe Peter is under publications and forums. Peter, it lists all.
And it's this one.
Yep.
Which one would you recommend? That one.
The supplement and the handbook. The supplement. It kind of goes a little more in depth about how you should answer each question. The supplement. Yeah, I think that was a supplement.
Yes, that's the supplement. Yep. Hold on, back to. Hold on.
Yeah, we're looking.
So it's this one with the questions in. Yep.
Yep. So the handbook, the applicant handbook has all the questions to the domains in there, so you're not surprised when you go into the application and see what the questions are. You can prepare yourself ahead of time and figure out, okay, maybe this project isn't as good as this other project to answer goals and outcomes, so I'm going to use this library, let's say. And then for science, I'm going to want to use the museum that I did. Obviously, all examples. But you can see that Peter's scrolling here, and he's getting to the definitions of the domains. Also, there's a appendix there that will give you exactly what you need. For example, there under domain 1, you have to have photos of a completed project in there. That is a requirement. Also for domain 7, you need a photo of the completed project, not a rendering or anything like that. Let's see.
Okay, so there you get and you detail that here in Appendix 3 exactly what the question you're going to get is. So
exactly,
it's all there. So you can either do it online, look at the questions one by one, or come back.
Right. Yeah. Some people, we do have another question, but let me finish this thought. Some people work on the application offline first because they have the questions. That way they can form their responses without having to stare at the screen in the online application. They can just open up a Word document or a notepad or whatever document editor you use, work on the questions there, and when you're ready to submit, you can just copy and paste all those responses into the application. We do find some people do that. Some people are able to just sit down and do it right there off the top of their head. Other people need a little more time, but go ahead and do that. When you do start your application, you do have 6 months to complete it. So I do suggest, depending on however best you work, whether that's just opening up and answering it right off the cuff, or forming your answer responses beforehand, you do have 6 months from the time that you start an application to complete it. Yes, today's presentation will be shared with the participants of this group. You'll get the slides, and the session will also be posted. The video recording will be posted on the CLD YouTube page and the CLD website as well.
Okay.
So
has anyone out there got some more questions?
Yeah. We'll stick around for another minute or so if anyone has anything. If not, we'll go ahead and...
This is truly amazing. If I've explained everything properly and people understand it, well, I suppose there's a first for everything, eh, Joe?
I think that is a reflection on the speaker if there are no questions. You've explained it sufficiently, and hopefully everyone is actually, going to sign up for the next webinar so they can learn how to organize and things like that. There is a great template that we will be sharing and using during that. It kind of, you put out you list your projects. There's a matrix of what domains you're going to use them in, so you've got them all covered, and it kind of tracks it for you automatically. So hopefully Dawn and Rosemary will be talking about that when we get to it.
Yeah. And what I would say is, if you're thinking about having a go at this and going to go to the webinar next week, why not download the handbook today, have a quick read of it. You'll get so much more out of the next webinar just by looking at that.
Yeah, we do have a question. We got two.
Oh, good.
Here's the first one. Was there more information on how the process gets streamlined with the affiliate memberships? It's an approved association. I'd imagine that the
yes, there is, and basically what happens is, now we come to this table on the web page, and you'll see that the collaboration domain and the stewardship domain are treated as being okay if you pass those, if you're a membership. So effectively, you have to only worry about 5 domains, not 7 domains. So it makes life a little bit easier.
Yep.
Okay.
One more question.
Got another one?
I can answer this one. Would you be able to share the link for sign up for April 16th webinar, or is that on they said IES website too, but I don't think it's going to be on the IES website. It is on the IALD.org website. It is also on the CLD website. So Peter, if you could go to the top of the page and click on the CLD logo in the top left. No, yep, there. That'll take you to the home page. And scroll down a little bit under what's new, and the 2 sign up times are there as well. A little bit further.
Okay, so.
Oh no, it's not on yours.
It's that seat. No, it's not on mine.
Not on yours. That is very strange because I uploaded this morning. If you go to IALD.org and under events and webinars, it's under there as well. Not sure why
IALD.org.
Yep.
Then where?
Let me bring it up too, just so I know where I'm pointing. Under ILD, if you go under events and then float over it all the way to the right, it says webinars.
Yeah, webinars.
Yep, go ahead and click on there, and then the webinars are listed.
Okay, so there you go, that one there.
Yep, there it is. So yeah, if you go to IALD.org, and it'll show up over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's I assume you'll update that because it doesn't say Rosemary's joining.
Yeah, I got that news really late on Friday, and with with some webinars this morning, I wasn't able to update that. But yes, that will be updated with her as well.
So with Dawn and Rosemary together, that should be an awesome event.
It should be, yep. They've done this webinar for a lighting firm. The firm wanted this information, so they actually did this privately for that firm, and it went really, really well, and a lot of great information. And a lot of people were opened up to how it's not as daunting as you think that it is once you see how to organize it and how the application works. So this is a really good piggyback off of the basic information that you got today. It is a lot of information that all the attendees received today, but when you attend Dawn and Rosemary's webinar, you'll see that it's not as daunting as it sounds. As long as again, because you know the questions ahead of time, because they'll help you get ideas on how to organize and fill out the application. You'll see that it's not as daunting as you think that it is.
Okay, so that's great. So hopefully most of you will be signing up for that webinar, because will be really useful if you want to take your CLD forward.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you to the attendees for joining. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to us, and we'll see you next.
And to everybody out there, stay well and enjoy as best you can your enforced time at home.
Thank you so much, Peter. Have a good day, everyone.